Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
The show this week will take a look at paid subscription models. Is getting fans to subscribe the new metric on social media? And is there a way to monetize fandom for indies?
Then we take a look to the future, as it's clear AI synthetic voices is going to be a thing. But when will we be able to accept that?
We'll ask those questions and more with our expert roundtable panel. Then C.L. Cannon will be along sharing multiple indie books that is sure to assassinate your to-be-read list. We hope that there's no blood spilled when we spend the last 5 minutes with Adam Gaffen as he introduces you to Kendra Cassidy. So sit down, grab your coffee, and let's get to talking about all these issues and more. Here's your host for This Week in Indies, Joe Compton. Hello, everybody. Welcome to This Week in Indies for January 30th. God, January's over. God, crazy. January 30th, 2022. Yes, as you heard, I am your host, Joe Compton. Welcome to the show. We've got a great show ahead for you. And this week's show is sponsored by the podcast that I do beyond this, which is called Kingdom of Heavy. And it is a heavy metal and fantasy podcast in which we explore the many realms of both and how they're connected, how they're disconnected, how fandom and toxicity reign supreme, and we try to combat that. We'll talk about the positives that go along with everything there. You can check that out. The link is in the description. I'm very happy to be a part of that endeavor, as I am this one. And we have, as always, an incredible show for you and a great round table. If I can just do this really quickly so that I can transition to this. Look at this. Look at this beautiful panel. Awesome. Welcome, everybody, to the show. Let's just get right into it, shall we? Let's have everybody introduce themselves, and then we will get to talking. All right. So, Mr. Ron, start us off, please.
Good morning. I'm Ron LAHR. I write fantasy, humorous fantasy, humor, science fiction, just humor. I also love soup.
All right. Very well. Good. Hey, soup's good. All right, Adam?
I mean, I really fucking love soup.
All right.
How can I top that? My name's Adam Gaffen. I write science fiction. Kendra, who you can see over my shoulder, is the main character. We'll be getting to know her a little bit later, maybe, if she doesn't butt in earlier. Anyways, I'm thrilled as always to be here with my fellow indie authors, and looking forward to this discussion.
Awesome. Glad to have you, sir. All right, Samantha?
Hi, I'm Samantha Bryant. I write a variety of speculative fiction. Most of my publications are in horror and hero, which is also a description of my day job as a middle school Spanish teacher. I am best known for my menopausal superheroes novels with my covers there behind my head. But I like to write a little bit of everything given the chance.
Nice. I like that. That's a neat little board that you have there. It's cool. Awesome. All right, AJ?
Hi, I'm AJ Mullikin. I write dystopian sci-fi with a romantic twist and a little bit of paranormal romance. Got some fresh new covers here that I just got last week. And I've got some new covers in my other series as well. And I'm here to chat with y'all.
And just in case you forgot her name, it's written right across the shirt there. So, awesome. We love it. Love branding. All right. Alexander?
Hey guys, I'm Alexander Gideon. My writing style can best be summed up by the phrase, and many people died. I write the book series whose name I can't remember, the Books of the Law series for Falstaff Books. And I also, just a couple months ago, put out my first self-published endeavor, which was a collection of short stories, Persistence. So that was really exciting, definitely a learning experience putting that one together.
Nice. Looking very sharp today, sir. We appreciate
Thank you.
that. I know somebody who really appreciates that, huh?
Indeed. You look I'm so proud of
and Anita's got your back, Ron. Who doesn't love Sue?
She is a very smart person.
All right. Well, I have a bunch of smart people here with me, so I'm very happy. See how I did that? but I'm very happy to talk to you all. I sent an article out. Hopefully, the people in the chat got a chance to take a look at it as well. I'd love to hear their feedback on it. But it was an interesting article. It wasn't necessarily designed for about authors and indie authors in particular, but it has a mention of it, and it kind of goes into it a little bit with that. And the idea is that people are moving themselves out of, searching for likes and, views, and more about putting it behind a paywall and making you pay for likes and views and that idea. And, I know probably some of you have a Patreon. Some of you have explored this option on your website or wherever. And I'm kind of curious from the panel, thoughts on how indies can benefit from this. Is this something that they can? Is this something that scares you how the future is going? What is everybody's thoughts on paywalls in general and the idea of subscription models?
Well, I mean, if nobody else is going to jump in,
please.
Yeah, I've got to say that one of the things that absolutely irritates me is when things get put behind paywalls. I realize, I understand why, you got to make the money, but I used to watch, grew up on, big fan of Doctor Who, right? And it was always available pretty much anywhere you wanted to look. And in the past few years, it's all gone behind paywalls of one sort or another. And having said that, yes, I'm a bit of a hypocrite in that I do have a Patreon, and there is content there, but that, I don't know. I'm torn in both ways. I see it from both sides as a consumer. If I'm reading something and they say, oh, by the way, to read more, you've got to pay now. That really turns me off, and it makes me not want to go back to it. So I don't know how it is. Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work with other readers. Read the first bit and then say, oh, got to pay now. Are you going to lose them?
Like Adam, I've got kind of mixed feelings too. Like I do, I support several different artists through Patreon, and there are a few authors that I'll pay for their specialized thing, like their Substack or whatever. And I have to be a pretty big fan before I'll go that far, though. Like if you're a new to me author and I can't get to your stuff easily to find out if I like your stuff, the chance of my subscribing to pay for it is really, really low. Subscriptions like that I get the idea that you don't want to be reliant on a platform that you don't own. because as we talked about on other shows, like, having all your eggs in the Amazon basket is a problem because they can kick your chicken butt out of that nest anytime they want. So I get wanting to control your platform, and that's an advantage of a lot of these different subscription kinds of systems. But I think there's like this threshold, and if you're not above that threshold and have a wide enough readership and following yet, you're probably not helping yourself by making people have to pay an extra level, go to a site they don't normally go to as part of their just everyday surfing to get to your stuff.
It's a lot like soup. No, I'm just kidding. But I don't have a problem with super fans, trying to monetize that and giving them extra content. But obviously, you don't want especially as indies, we don't want our content, our main content, harder for people to reach. I mean, our issue is reaching more people and exposing them to our work. But yeah, I have a Patreon, and I mean, I think that's sensible. I mean,
I haven't gotten into Patreon yet. I'm kind of torn between, do I want to monetize and make more money? Well, yeah, of course. But do I want to I don't want to make my stuff too exclusive. Like, I'd rather just any content I create, I want people to see. And so I feel like if I put it behind the Patreon paywall, it's going to be like, well, no one's going to see it because no one's going to want to pay for it, And so with KU and stuff like that, I can get more people seeing my stuff. And then hopefully they go and buy subsequent things or whatever. But I'm just not sure that I even have the platform to start a Patreon even. That I have the readership yet.
you can always start one. It doesn't have to be successful.
That is a point, but do I want to put the time into one if it's not going to be successful? That's another thing. Creating bonus content and what have you, when I could be creating my regular content.
I don't recall who said it, but somebody said super fans. And was that you, Ron?
I don't know. I thought it was Samantha. But
anyway, Samantha. Anyways, it said, we're super fans. And that's kind of the way I see the Patreon stuff, because I post on my regular site. I post, chapters of the books so people can go and read the books, one chapter at a time. So it's kind of, dragging it out, but they can read it for free. The Patreon stuff, they get the extra stuff. They get the sneak peeks. The once a month post that they get is a look at something I'm writing. So they get the raw stuff. That's not going to be out for 6 or 8 months. So they're getting it way ahead of time, but it's not like they're getting something that nobody else will ever get.
Mm-hmm.
They're just getting it early and not corrected or edited. I don't know if that's a good thing. I'd have to rethink this.
And that's the thing as well. Like, I know the way me and Samantha's publisher, John Hartness, works it is that he'll do short stories. Generally puts them through edits that doesn't give them to him raw, but they have an exclusivity period that they get the short story, and then after that time he will put it on up on Kindle or collect it into a collection or sell it somewhere else, that kind of thing. So it's like Adam was saying, they're not the only ones that get it, but they're getting it early. I also agree that I don't feel like I've got the readership to make a Patreon successful to put the time into it. But I think a really good first stepping stone, which is still subscription based, but not a pay for subscription, is a newsletter, and that's something that I'm trying to put together. And I really like David B. Coe's model, where it's like you get some news on the first page, second page is snippet of what's work that's coming out or work that's being worked on, that kind of thing. And I think if you can build a good newsletter, build a good base there, those are people, especially if you have people that aren't unsubscribing, that kind of stuff. They are getting your monthly newsletter and they're actually reading it and you're seeing the click-throughs. Then then I feel like I could start a Patreon because I might have people that would be interested in exclusive short stories, exclusive content, that kind of thing.
Yeah, time is definitely a factor in that. I think AJ was saying, like, do I want to invest the time in something that I don't know if I can make successful? I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm a writer with a day job, and not just a day job, a very demanding day job. So my writing life fits into 1 to 2 hours a day on average. So even though I'm interested in a Patreon, and I think I could get at least a light following, I've already got a newsletter following and a decent reader base. I don't want to give up any part of those 1 to 2 hours a day for that instead of for actually creating the new work. It's tough enough to balance the kind of marketing life versus writing life in such a small amount of time each day. I'm not willing to do it right now.
I have a day job too, and a lot of my writing time is like in the early morning hours that I wake up before time to get ready for work. That's when I write, as opposed to in the evenings when I'm spending time with my husband who's awake. It's not feasible with a full-time day job for me to, or at least in my mind, for me to create bonus content when I could just be creating regular content and getting more stuff out there.
That's part of the issue, right? Is Patreon, you have to be on it. You have to put content on it. You have to constantly put content on it, or people will start to think it's not worth it to spend the money on it, right? And also you only get one chance at it. So if you muck it up the first time, nobody's going to come back to it because they remember that first time that it was awful, right? So Anita says that she started a Ko-Fi page, which she likes better than Patreon. It has more money-making options like a paywall and a donate button and shop options. And I was going to bring up the donate button. Does anybody on their website have a donate button or anything like that?
I don't have one on my website, but several people I follow do. And I'm the kind of person who, if I read your blog post and really enjoyed it and I see the little Ko-Fi button, I'll toss you at least $1, even though I'm a middle school teacher and I only have like $6.
That's generous.
I'll toss you $1. But I know that when I talk to them about how that's going, even a post that gets a ton of reads often doesn't get a ton of donations. Like, people are like, well, I read it, I enjoyed it. And maybe they'll do you a solid and like share it and tell someone about it, but they're unlikely to do the $1.
Yeah, for me, it comes down to return on investment, and the thing that we have to invest is time, like Samantha was saying. And if we don't have a lot of time, then that makes it more valuable. And if you're throwing a lot of time at something and only getting pennies back, then it's not worth it. If something like Ko-Fi, okay, yes, you're only getting pennies back, but you're not putting a lot of time into it, then that's something that's worth looking at, because it is because the return is more balanced with what you're investing into it.
Interesting. Vanessa says the one thing about Patreon is that you can offer things you've already written, but aren't using, like deleted scenes or organizational stuff like setting sketches. That's true. You could put old content on there so that, that's one way of, filtering content on there and keeping it going, right? So, and then she said that she took the creator survey and it looks like they're going to be offering more things like Ko-Fi with donations and etc. Gee, Patreon, it only took you a couple years to get up with the speed with everything, right? So, but yeah, that's interesting. I mean, beyond Patreon, a lot of things, the model that I've always kind of steered away from Patreon myself, because like I said, you only get a first time, to do it. And then if you muck it up, and then you realize it's not worth it, then you don't do anything. And then people remember that who did subscribe the first time and they don't come back, kind of idea. So I always felt like that was the case with Patreon. So I didn't want to go into something like that. Plus Patreon takes money from you. So it's like, which I get, it's a service, they're providing it, they got to get paid too. It's part of what they do. Right. So, but I don't like that aspect of it. There's other places you can go that that don't take as much from you kind of idea, like Ko-Fi, I think, is one of them. But the other idea of the other thing that we were looking at in talking about paywalls in GoD now is the idea of there's a model out there where you're putting it behind your website, right? You have your website has a opening to freedom. You have your free stuff. You put your shops and everything like that. And then there's a page where you can go beyond the website and offer content behind a paywall on a website. And then you don't have to send people other places. You don't have to, give them extra links. You don't have to do this or do that. And you could do it that way. And you could do it all as a subscription model, monthly, per click, all of those things that Patreon can't do. So I was curious if anybody's ever looked into that and thought about that idea.
No, and I'm just going to throw it out there that people like to feel that they're doing something that other people aren't. So by having to go somewhere else, they're going, okay, I'm doing something special, so I'm getting something special in return. Whereas, I don't know how successful all of this stuff on the website is free, but this stuff over here you got to pay for. It's real easy. All you got to do is click and pay, and you're in. But I don't know if people are going to get the same psychological reward for doing that as they will for going somewhere else. So I don't know how well that'll work.
The way I've seen that work best is actually with not so much content creation, but as like community curation. So like Sarah Gailey, I guess that's how you pronounce her last name. I've only ever read it. I've not seen it. But she wrote Magic for Liars and The Echo Wife is who I'm talking about. So they have a thing called Stone something. Sorry, I'm a bad subscriber. I don't remember the name of it, but it has the word Stone in it. And it's pretty much a community. Like, they put up like a blog post kind of conversation starter on Fridays. And really, you're paying for the access to this community that gets Friday afternoons talking to Sarah. And she responds kindly and supportively, and it's a very friendly little place. And so I've kept on subscribing, even though I only make it there like one every 6 Fridays. Because when I do go, it makes me feel good, and it makes me feel like I got something special. So I like that. And that's something I would maybe consider for myself, but again, that's time. So first, I'm going to have to retire from teaching.
So we have our core product, which is the writing, and I know for me, I want to get more books out. And aside from the time issue, when I've consulted with companies, one of the traps businesses fall into is, well, I'm not making enough money at my core business, which in our case is writing, so I'm going to do these other things. And I just personally have a bit of a prejudice against that. I want what I sell to be the books.
Yeah, I'm with Ron on that. That's what we do. We create the books and the stories and put them out there, and that's what we're selling.
But you also have fandoms that when you get to a point, they want more. They want to feel like you, to your point, Adam, they want to feel special, right? And so giving them those special things, you could do it, as Alexander said, in your newsletter and do it that way. You could also do it through Patreon and those ideas. And Vanessa brings up a good point that I wanted to actually talk about. And one of the things that I've seen, she says using website depends a huge amount on your SEO success. And one of the things I've seen that I think has been successful with the website idea is incorporating it within the model of where you're broadcasting from. Like, for example, I'm using broadcasting as an example, but reading is a little bit different. But you could also do it with that as well, because some of us do live readings and whatever. But the idea is that YouTube also has a subscribe option, right? Once you get to a certain point, you can join and you get a little extra content from YouTube on that idea. And most of the people use YouTube for their Patreon, by the way. If people didn't know that, there's a little sausage being made right there. But you can do that. Vimeo also offers the same option, and there's other places that you can go where you're still. So the people who have found you that way can still contribute and be subscribing and feel that little special feeling that they need to feel being somewhere else, because they don't feel as special being on your website, and still they incorporate one another. They work in tandem with one another, and so there's a way to do that as well. But I mean, I get it. For us, it's all about the writing and putting out more stuff that way, and getting people to go to Amazon and pay for our book is damn hard to begin with, let alone trying to get them to, do more and get more from, the experience that we give them. So I'm curious, at what point would you think about doing something like that? Is it when you amass a fandom that's asking for more? Where is your threshold in terms of, and this is going to be a common theme throughout, because I got another question for you that's related to this, as you all know. But the idea of when is it time to make that leap? Where do you feel like you see people being successful? Because there's indie authors that right off the bat get a Patreon. Even if they've published one book, they get a Patreon to put it out there. And some of them have actually been successful at it, But so is it when you accumulate knowledge? Because you could also use your Patreon for, hey, look, I know how to write a book. Let me teach you, kind of thing as well. So where are you at in terms of when you would think about this, really? Is there any point that you would think about it?
I've thought about it from the beginning.
I'm pretty pragmatic about it. I think it's time and money.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Time and money, right? I'm a school teacher, so I don't make much. I make $48K a year, which in North Carolina is astonishingly high.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because I started long enough ago that I got grandmothered in on the whole you still get paid for your master's degree thing. But so when I can balance where writing is making close enough to that I could let teaching go, so then I can regain some time, that's my moment for that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I would say, when I can give up the time hogging day job, the soul sucking, etc., and actually just write, then I might consider something like that.
I think the platform has to be there. I don't think it has to be as big as we might think it would be. I mean, if I had 100 subscribers for a newsletter, I'd think about a Patreon. But I think it's also, you got to think about what content you put on your Patreon, because what I would say is that kind of platform is not because someone likes your writing. That platform is because someone likes you. And if all you put on that platform is writing, you're probably not going to. You'll get some people that'll subscribe, and they're probably going to unsubscribe after a while. It's like, I get short stories. Is it really worth it for me to do this month after month? But if you're getting things like, I've considered things like videos of me singing songs that I've written. My guitar's back there that no one's ever heard. Playing songs, snippets of songs that I've never heard. Talking in depth about things. Like Ron just posted tasteful nudes, but I mean, that's OnlyFans, not Patreon. I've thought about that. I've thought about writing, crazy smut when my books aren't selling that well, knowing that, Bigfoot X Godzilla sells really, really well. But it's people. Yeah, right, there you go. There you go. That I've so completely considered it. But it's people like you. And if you want to keep people subscribing and you want to make the most of that platform, you've got to be able to do things that make people continue to like you and want to be involved in your writing life, your regular life. Just have that, like, I know this person personally from this, not just, oh, I got some writing. And that's what I feel would really make it successful.
See, that's hard for me. I have a lot of trouble with the personal aspect of the marketing because I'm very introverted. I am not a go out there and put myself out like this. This is different. This is like I'm in the guest bedroom of my house, comfortable, whatever. But like going out and creating marketing videos, creating those TikToks where you're actually on the screen, I can't make myself do that. And so that's very hard for me to connect on a personal level because I have trouble connecting personally in person.
Mm-hmm.
So that's tough for me.
And that's kind of where I have the benefit of kind of being, what is it called? Like an omnivert. Where it's like, I'm, and it is, it's like, I'm generally introverted and it does take me a while to get there, but I can put that mask on. I can be on. And that's the way I am at conventions and that kind of stuff. I'm very personable at conventions and I'll stop and I'll talk to someone and I'll do that. But in my normal life, if I'm walking down the street and somebody talks to me, I'm like, like that's who I am.
Teaching
So
is
it's
good
like
for me that way. Teaching
Yeah.
is good for me that way.
Mhm.
There's you're in front of a bunch of kids who are all going to notice every time your shoe's untied, your socks don't match, or your hair's
Ambivert.
messy, and you just have to get over it and just go on about things anyway. And so that's helped me a lot with being able to do something that would make me feel a little cringy under other circumstances. I just pretend that the only people watching are the 12-year-olds in my class, and that I'm not as injured if they don't like me because they're 12.
And 12-year-olds, even 12-year-olds, I mean, a little bit younger, more so, but 12-year-olds still they're kind of on the precipice of learning filters, but they still don't have a filter. So some things they can teach you in terms of that, and or discourage you either way. But
they can be the meanest people on the planet. Oh my god.
Well, and,
Yeah.
and I've got to say that doing the marketing and doing getting on other people's podcasts and getting out and talking to people this way has helped me be able to turn it on a little bit better when I'm not on the other side of a screen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how much of in person, do you feel like is more of a marketing aspect for you than being on social media? Is in person? Does there need to be a healthy balance? I mean, right now, obviously, there's no balance. I mean, it's really tough to be in person anywhere. It's happening, but some of us, even us extroverts, even are like, no, screw you. I'm not going to be in a tin can with 40,000 people up against me, breathing on me all day long. No, thank you. I've had it. I don't need it again. I'm good. Even though I'm vaccinated, I know I could still get it. All of that, and so I'm kind of like, all right. There's a limit to how I'm going to go to these things, and I crave that. I mean, like for me, in 2020 was a nightmare. I know people would find that weird because I do this like weekly, and I'm here constantly online and talking to people, but there's nothing that replaces for me personal interaction and being in the same space as a person. There's just something different about it for me. And I need that. I crave it. And so, and I love going and traveling and seeing other people and doing that. So 2020 was a nightmare. And, last year I got to go out only sparingly, and it was awesome. It was just fantastic. So, for me, I weigh that more heavily in terms of, because I do a lot of talking to people about where, I'm around a bunch of creatives, so we're talking about creative stuff, and so that's when I get excited, and it just naturally shows, and people see that, and then they're naturally interested in what I'm doing. So I'm kind of curious if that's the same for ambiverts, introverts and the like, and where are you at? Because social media can be devastating as much as anything else, and time consuming to the 10th degree. And it's almost better if you just do it live, right? Because then you don't have to type it, you don't have to follow it up or anything like that, right? So,
but typing, I can backspace, I can fix in what I've written and before I send, and honestly, I feel like you get more of me, like my personality, through the memes and stuff I share than you would talking to me in person. Especially when I'm just getting to know somebody. But when you've gotten to know me, or when you've seen like my Facebook feed, you're like, what the heck is this person all about? And it's like, well, yeah, that's me. But I don't do that like in person as much. So, not as many people see that.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
In person is really.
It's easier to assess your kind of return on investment when you're doing something live. Like, you can get this vibe from the room and know if you've come across and made some connections. And especially when it's at something like a convention, I'll know pretty instantly how successful I was, because how many people showed up at my table later and asked to get a book, right? That'll give you a real clear measure. Whereas when I do something online, it's supposed to be very immediate, right? And it is in a sense, but sometimes stuff takes a long time to kind of trickle out there. And so, like, my most popular video on my YouTube channel is me reading a poem a few years ago that I didn't even write. I was just reading a poem that I liked and talking about it. And that thing still gets likes all the time. And I'm like, why? Like, where is this even coming up? And so the tale and the timeline, it's great in that you're not limited by geography or time zone, and you can potentially connect with all kinds of people, but it just doesn't have the immediacy. And I think it's much harder to know how successful you were with it, because your success might come 6 months or 6 years later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, and like she was saying, you see the people that are showing up at your table, and it gives you that in-person chance to market, whether it is, hey, I've got this, here's the first book in the series, second book is coming out soon, and maybe we'll take a look at that. If you have a newsletter, maybe that's, I've seen a lot of authors will have it set up where someone can actually subscribe to your newsletter right there at your table, and that's something that you can do. Or, you just, be able to give them a bookmark that's got the link, to it or to your website or something like that, so they can click through. They can see the stuff if they like your writing. But that's not going to happen if they didn't like you. You are the most important thing. Like I was saying before. It's the golden circle of selling, and the important part comes through of people don't buy what you're doing, they buy why you do it. And that's what they get from you. They get the personality, they get the who you are, and if they really like you, they really like your writing, they want to know more about you. That's why people will subscribe to a newsletter, not just to get the things, but to get that little taste of like what else is going on in their life. What don't I know about them? Because I'm big fans of a lot of writers. Being a big fan of writers, I went to conventions to meet them because I wanted to know them in person. Some of my good friends are people that I've met at conventions, and I went there to see them. And that's why people are at conventions. That's why conventions are so important, because not only are they there to see certain writers, certain things, but they also are meeting new people. They're also looking for new people to look at their work and that kind of thing. And that's why I think in person is so important.
Yeah, but see, I've only had one convention experience as an author. It was too expensive. It wasn't enough return. I only had one book out at the time. There was a lot of factors going against it. And so I haven't done it again. And so it's like, now the pandemic's hit, there's not as many in-person conventions even as there were before, for me to even have a chance to try it again. And so I don't get that experience of going out there and having the person meet me in person because everything that's going on. It just hasn't been feasible.
I'm curious, AJ, from your perspective too, because I know a lot of virtual cons have been happening, and that aspect of it. Have you have you embraced those at all? Do you feel like those are helpful for
I feel
an
like I find
introvert?
out about them like way after. Like I don't even find out about them until they're all done. It's like, well, darn, I could have done that.
Yeah, there's a lot out there that are badly marketed, you know. So
Yeah.
you know, but I mean, we try our best to put it out there, but you know, I can only help those who want to help themselves. So you know, it's hard. It's hard.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I wanted to comment on what AJ said about the return on investment for those in-person events, because I was in the same boat starting out. You know, my first book came out in 2015, and I did my first convention in 2015 with one book. And I still consider that a really valuable experience, even though when you look at the money of it, I totally went in the red to do that. You know, I had to pay to get there, I had to pay to stay there, and I bought my food and everything, and I made like, I don't know, $10. But it was still a really valuable experience on the long tail, because I met people at that convention who, you know, one of the people I met at that convention is now my publisher, right? And some of the other people I met at the convention are now my good colleagues and friends and supporters. And it was just part of the learning, right? You know, I got there, I survived being on panels, found out that if there's a good moderator, I actually like being on panels and that kind of stuff. And it's really started getting a sense of what were the skills I was going to need to develop. What were the things, like actually physical things, that maybe I should buy or invest in to be successful in this area. So I think I wouldn't give up too soon, right? You don't know how valuable it's going to turn out to be.
But it's also, you got to think about, like, I'm not the only person that has to pay for these conventions. My husband's got to deal with, you know, the money. It's his money too. So I can't just say, oh, I want to do these conventions, so let's go. You know, we got to consider the other person in the life. So.
Oh, for certain, yeah.
I have the ultimate first experience horror story. I got you all beat. None of you can beat me. I'm telling you that right now. The very first book convention I ever did, and I had one book out as well. It was Portland's Book Festival. It was a summertime weekend, or heading into summertime. It was actually springtime, but summertime was right around the corner. I go to this convention that I heard so much about. This book festival is very famous. It's very, very well run. It's very well done. It's in a little square right underneath downtown. Like there's the Starbucks they've got this little enclave where the Starbucks is on top, and it's just this little square. I go and do this thing. I got my banners. I got my tablecloth with all my marketing on it for my one book. I got candy. I was, you know, I'd done so much research. I was ready to go. I was super excited. And, you know, you're far apart enough where you don't have the same interaction. It's not a con. It's just a book selling event. I go, and there's dark clouds in the sky, and it literally pours rain the entire weekend. I did not sell a damn thing because nobody came. And the locals who were there all told me this never happened in the history of 45 years of this book weekend. I literally was like the bad luck charm. So I haven't been back since, but like I can't. They all blame me. They're like, "You came. You're the only person that's new here. You came and you brought the rain." And I actually told the son, I was sitting in the bar. I was really dejected, and one of the waitresses at the bar, who had seen me a couple times, because that's the only place you can eat because it's so far away from everything, and you're during business hours, you're working on your books things. So she came and we had a nice conversation. She goes, "I'm going to buy your books, and so that you don't go away without a sale." So I sold one book that entire weekend because somebody took pity on me. But the very next convention I went to was a local one where I didn't have as much overhead. I brought all my books that I didn't sell in Portland there, and I sold out within 3 hours. And so it just really depends on circumstance and situation. But I mean, there's silver lining for you, I guess. But that was my very first experience. Joe is cursed. Yes, Joe is cursed.
And I think, with a lot of those, you also got to look at the kind of in-person event that you're doing, like Comic-Cons and that kind of stuff, where people are just there to buy. You've only got a couple of books. It's not worth it for you, because people don't at those events don't generally stop at the person with 3 books. They stop at Bobby Nash's 50 book display, or they stop at the Falstaff book display that's got all of these books, and it's really attention grabbing. Conventions, though, like regular conventions where you can be on panels, are the ones where honestly I've sold pretty decently. But there are things that you've got to do. You've got to be at your table. You've got to commit to being at your table for the majority of the weekend. Because if you're not there, you can't be selling books. You also got to take advantage of all of those opportunities after panels and that kind of stuff, talking to people, interacting, leading them over to your table. So there's a lot of salesman like aspects that you've got to have to be successful there. But like, if you can do that, I was at Atomicon, which is a small con. We're talking like 100 people. I sold $300 worth of books there. It was also kind of a weekend where people really wanted to buy books, but I was also, every person that passed my table, I was talking to them, trying to get them over, trying to be personable, like me, come look at my stuff, that kind of thing. And it works. It's hard to do. It can be exhausting over a weekend, but it can work, and you can make, it's hard to break even, but you can at least get some of it back. I paid for my Airbnb.
Nice.
Well, and there's ways to cut expenses too. Like I'm going to go to Multiverse for the first time this year. That'll be a new con for me this year. So I'm sharing a room with another Falstaff author, so that cuts my expenses, right? And I already worked out with John to make sure he'll sell my books at my table, so I don't have to work on flying to Atlanta and having a table. And I was like, no. So I still have the opportunity to sell books without having to manage it myself. And
I'm trying to go
I
to
think
Multiverse.
that's something to look at events in general. AJ was talking about the stress on the family, and I've definitely had that too, right? If I go to a convention, I'm leaving my poor husband alone with our 14-year-old and our dogs, and that's a big ask. I can't do that too much. So I've started looking at more events that are only one-day events, where I can go do a book fair and I'm only gone on Saturday, but I'll still be here on Sunday. So I could potentially be the one to go to the grocery store. I don't have to put it all on poor sweet man. So that's something to consider is, you don't have to do 3-day conventions to still be getting out there for events. And, and a good one too is libraries. I've been doing a lot more library events, and generally those don't cost me anything at all other than getting myself there. Or they cost me like a token fee, like $10 for my table. So the threshold for making back your buck is pretty darn small. And libraries are happy, friendly places. They're good places to be.
And Vanessa says, I did great at Atlantic Comic Con with 2 books, but I also shared a table with someone who had 5 books. So we had a total of 7. I think that's key because it's absolutely a buying event. Yeah.
There's that threshold of amount of books that need to be on the table to be eye-catching enough to stand you out from other people.
Gotta have variety.
Yeah.
One
you
of the
also
things
have to have really good covers like Samantha does.
Absolutely. And one of the things I would say too that separates the Bobby Nashes and the John Hartnesses of the world from all of us here, bringing back the conversation to Patreon and paying for it, is the idea that they have so many stuff that if you go to their table and show any kind of enthusiasm, they're going to hand you something for free to start with. They've got your gateway drug right there in their hands, and they're going to hook you because they're good dealers and they know how to get you in. So that you pay for the hard stuff, right? And then they get you hooked, and that's how they do it. I mean, I'm never had seen Bobby Nash. I never had met him. I met him in person at Dragon Con, and he literally handed me 3 things. Here you go. Here, check me out. Take a look at what I'm doing. John was the same way. Even though I knew John beforehand, I had never met him in person. When he goes, here. You're in enough. I can give you this, kind of thing, right? So, and so that's the kind of thing that they offer. So it is about volume. Ultimately, I think is what we can, glean from that little statement, I guess. But speaking of volume, we are so overwhelmed with ideas of how do we get our stuff sold. And luckily for us, we have a little segment that we like to call the Indie Connection that can help you. If you're a fan of certain books, check out these indies who do the same thing. CL Cannon has this for you this week. It's a really good one. It'll slay you.
Hey guys, CL Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. Today I'm going to be telling you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you are a fan of Sabaa Tahir's An Ember in the Ashes. This is one of my favorite series, and I'm really excited to bring you some indie books that are a lot like this one. So here they are. The first book I have for you is called Rise by J.M. Curl. Magic is outlawed. The penalty is death. Can one girl's quest to save her father start a rebellion? Dalen's life on the farm has been simple, but she knows her magic-born mother keeps secrets. What is she hiding? Why do strange men speaking the enemy kingdom's language show up at their door? What do they want? Dalen hasn't prepared for what's to come. She'll need to learn to fight, deceive, and embrace her inner warrior. It's in her blood. Her parents were never farmers. They're highly trained spies. And to save her father from the gallows, she'll need to become one too. Can she beguile the enemy prince and his house to set her father and possibly even magic free? The next book I have for you is called Relic by Bronwyn Ellie. A fatal job, a deadly jewel. How long would Kaylin survive? Snatched from her life as a blacksmith, Kaylin Rove is forced to become the Shadow, a personal servant of a ruthless and powerful lord. But Lord Renard himself isn't the threat. It's the relic he wears around his neck, a stone that protects his bloodline but poisons everyone else in its proximity. Kaylin's life becomes a waking nightmare as the relic slowly destroys her body and mind. But just as hope begins to fade, she discovers a rebel plot that might put an end to Renard's rule. The third book I have for you is called A Dagger in the Winds by Brendan Noble. An outcast cursed since birth, a witch chosen by a goddess. Torn apart by fate, together, can they save their tribe from eternal winter? All Waclaw has ever dreamed of is belonging and purpose. Except he's never actually dreamed. Each night, his soul leaves his body, allowing him to wander invisibly until he wakes. He'd do anything to know why. Even give a blood offering to the goddess of winter and death. As a priestess of spring, there's no one Auntie Lita hates more than the winter goddess, except maybe her once best friend Waclaw. It's been 4 years since she saved his life using forbidden magic. Her thanks? Abandonment. Winter stole her mother just weeks later, and Waclaw never came. But when Alita discovers Waclaw bearing the winter goddess's mark on what should be the first day of spring, she realizes the horrific truth. Winter will not end, and Waclaw is her only hope of discovering why. And the last book I have for you is called All That We See or Seem by Christina Marr. Every night, 17-year-old Reeve Lennox finds herself under a noose. By day, she is a lady of Arcasade's royal house, daydreaming of adventure and love. But every night in sleep, she wanders through a nightmarish city, an invisible witness to the screeches of monsters and the screams of their victims. Her only consolation is Bran, a battle-torn young man with a selfless heart and eyes that reflect the stars. Yet while Reeve falls deeper into her dream, in truth she is engaged to Arden, a mercurial nobleman who has long been cured of his belief in love, and breathes fire and flattery like other people breathe air. Torn between two lives, Reeve struggles to remember what's real, until night and day collide with a revelation that threatens all of Arcasad. Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on Indie Connection. Bye.
As always, a great Indie Connection. We're so honored to bring that to you each and every week. Thank you to CL Cannon. Thank you to all the authors who put all their hard work into those gorgeous covers and wonderful blurbs. And, go and check them out. The descriptions are there, as are everybody's links are available for you to take a look at. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But I did have a question for the panel that I wanted to present, because something that's kind of interesting that has been going on and evolving in our world is technology, and as it always does, and AI and synthetic voices are starting to make their mark on the audiobook industry in respects to almost DIY aspects, where you can almost create your own audiobook and do it in not a manner where it's kind of like, oh, I'm gonna put out an audiobook and I don't care about the process or anything like that. This is actually, there's some synthetic voice software out there that you can buy or rent or whatever, subscribe to, that you can actually go through the process and do it. And so my question again to the panel is, at what point does this look viable to you? I mean, right now it sounds like, much like I did in my intro, it sounds but, or, very robotic. And so I'm kind of curious, at what point would you all consider it? Because it doesn't seem like ACX and Find Away Voices are so keen on bringing down the price so that you can join them in their endeavors, because it does cost a lot to do this, and we want artists to get paid for what they're worth. And so if you're hiring a producer who is in this business, they know their worth and they're going to charge you accordingly. But that being said, it's not a feasible option for indies a lot of times because it's too expensive. It's a lot. And so these hacks and these inventions are starting to come across, and people are starting to use them. And I've seen a couple of them out there now. And so I was just curious what everybody thought, and where you are in terms of when you might actually consider it a viable option.
I think until they actually are able to have the emote come out in the voice, the AI voice, it's not really that feasible, because a lot of people will turn off an audiobook if the narration is terrible. I've read one where they did this horrible fake accents, or listened to, and I couldn't. And for like 20 years, I didn't read another audiobook, and because I was like, I can't with that. But like, if there's a good narrator and they've got feeling and they've got emotion, it comes across. And I think that makes the readers or listeners more interested in actually listening to the story, as opposed to buying the actual book.
A good half of my reading is in audiobooks, because I have a much bigger desire to read than I have time to sit still and look at a page and not do anything else at the same time. So yeah, easily half of what I read is audiobooks. And I can't hack those digital voices. They don't sound right. So the tech still has a way to go. When you compare it to the first digital voices I heard when I was taking a summer camp class in the 1980s, yes, they're amazing. But when you compare it to the range and expression of a real human's voice who comprehends what they're reading and is feeling it as they read it, there's no comparison. And a lot of audiobook fans are serious snobs about narration. Like if you go to Audible or Chirp or any of the services and you read the reviews are mostly about the narration, not about the book. And a lot of times people will just put it down if it's not a good marriage of story and narration, or if there's problems with the narration, like mispronounced words or bad accents or just a wooden performance, then it's over. And so if the point of me having an audiobook is to gain more audience in the audiobook readers, it has to be a good audiobook or it's not worth it.
Would you like to play a game? Right?
I think
I just dated myself, everybody.
Yeah, just a smidge.
I think
That's okay.
that
I remember it too.
Thank you.
We as writers in English, that there's so many options for audiobooks and narrators and that kind of thing for us, that it's easy for us to say, oh, I don't want an AI voice for my book. And I wouldn't for an English release. I would definitely want a human reading the book and putting the emotion into it. But you also have to step back and look at all of the languages that audiobooks are not being produced for, that these companies can produce audiobooks for using AI voices. And so if I can have an English release with a human author or with a human narrator, that's fantastic. But if I want my book to be in 77 languages, maybe I step back and allow some AI voices, because there are people that have hard times reading that audiobooks are much better for them. So if in countries where it's much less available, they can have access to that, they're going to be happy with that. Whereas we have that, that plethora of narrators that, make us kind of spoiled in that regard. I also think that there are, outside of the realms of fantasy and what we're writing, there are history books, there are, philosophy books, that kind of thing, that if those can be made available through audiobooks to people who are in languages that it may not have been available in, I think that's actually fantastic. So I think you have to look at the entire width and breadth of what this means for books in general. I don't think it's going to drive out human narrators. I don't think it is. There's just, they're not at the level where they can listen to that. But I think there is a place in the market for them.
Yeah, Regine agrees with you. He's along the same lines. He says, I want to consume a book while driving without having to find the audiobook. A lot of nonfiction history stuff doesn't get one. So.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I had the good fortune of being on a panel a couple weeks ago at Cosign, and we were talking, there were authors and there was a narrator, and we were talking about audiobooks. And one of the authors pulled up on his phone, I don't remember which service it is, but he pulled up one of the text-to-speech services, and it was good. It was not, it didn't have the full range of tonality that you would expect from somebody reading. But for what it was reading, which was nonfiction, like Alexander was saying, like Regine was saying, it was perfectly fine. I think what the other consideration to Alexander's point about other languages is, first we got to get our stuff translated into the other languages, which is a problem unto itself, because we all have the horror stories. We all know the horror stories and the bad jokes about what Google Translate and all of those services do. So first you have to find a human translator to translate your book. But as for considering them for an audiobook, and where that price point is, because as Joe mentioned, ACX is not cheap. Some of that is up to you as the author to negotiate with your narrator. My next book, the one that comes out in a couple of days, I actually found a really good narrator who's just getting started, who did it just straight royalty share. She and I are in it together for 7 years, and she read it, she produced it, and it came out really well. And it's nothing out of my pocket. We're in it together. So, finding the narrators, it becomes a little bit more difficult, because you really got to go through more. You can't just say, oh, well, this person has done 20 audiobooks and, they have 70 samples here and they're really, really good. Oh, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pay the $250 an hour that they want. And you have to dig.
The other thing about translating that people don't realize, that I learned firsthand, I had my book in Germany do quite well. And one of the things that was going on through the translation was that I had to change certain phrases, certain words, because they were offensive in German, or so you also will be doing a lot of more work in that respect on top of that translating, because they will change something in the book to, cater to the people they're translating for, and so yeah, you have to be careful of that as well. That's important. Vanessa says AI reading only works if you don't have any weird words or pronunciation. Yeah, that's another thing, right? You know, I could imagine an AI trying to pronounce Cathaldi, right, Ron? It would be just
or any fantasy or science fiction.
I would say
maybe.
anything that's paranormal. That's all gonna throw things
for
off.
For me, when I'm listening to an audiobook or even watching TV or a movie, and the actor misrepresents the intention of the author, right? They just interpreted it wrong, and and I mean, I don't have a great example on hand, but it's like, instead of "how you doing," it's like "how are you doing," and you're like, well, that's not what the person wrote. It really takes me out of my enjoyment of the audiobook or show. And with humor, that's particularly prevalent. And that's why I love audiobooks where the authors read the book, like Tina Fey or Amy Poehler, because you know that they're landing the jokes the way they intended. And so I only have one audiobook out, and I asked the company that produced it to find the most sarcastic, narrator they could, and they did, and he did an awesome job. But I think when human beings can't always make the right decision, it makes it very unlikely that AI is going to get there, for those judgment calls about how phrases should be presented. So I think it'll be very hard for humor writers to ever use AI narrators.
Yeah, my biggest pet peeve in a film or even an audiobook, I've heard it, is when somebody uses an accent and then they get out of that accent, even if it's just for a word, and I notice it, I'll never believe you in that accent ever again. I always bring up the one example that everybody hates me bringing up, but it is true. Go and watch it. I'm telling you right now. But Hunt for Red October, watching Sean Connery do a Russian accent is like, murdering hawks in the background. It is horrible. It is absolutely disgusting, and it took me out of the movie in like 5 seconds. I was like done. I was done. I couldn't do it anymore. I mean, there's other incredible examples out there, but that was it.
What about when Alec Baldwin did his impersonation of Sean Connery doing the Russian accent?
Yes,
that was like a highlight for me.
Yeah, okay, that I could get away with, but it's tough. It's really tough. I mean, and it's really hard to listen to and absorb. And I also think emotion is another thing that AI doesn't capture very well right now, and that is also something that you want to have when you're doing something like just that Boromir dies. All right, great, thanks. It's like, all right, cool. I guess he died. I don't know how he died or why, but I guess he died. But that's cool. All right, and that's something what the AI wouldn't capture, right? It doesn't have that emotion. Like literally, the audiobook guy is crying when he's talking about it, right? So it's like, okay, that's a little too emotional, but whatever.
Plus, how would the AI pronounce his name?
Right? Yeah. It would be
Romer.
Last night, in preparation for this, I poked around online, just seeing what free, text to speech software is out there.
No.
And some of them are okay if you have one or two voices which are okay, but most of them are really ow, it was painful.
Yeah. And no chance in hell, Regine. I would have brought that one up too, but that was very tough. Yes, it's very tough. Yeah. Also, Sean Connery's in that movie as well, everybody. But at least he gets to play. He gets to play a natural accent for him. So, hello, Gabby. Nice to see you. All right. But anyway, so yeah, I think we're all in agreement. AI has a long way to go before it captures us, right? I mean, even as cheap as it is, you almost are better off not putting out something than putting something out, right? That's kind of the idea behind it, I would assume, All right, so let's say goodbye. So everybody, Alex will go backwards this time. So, Mr. Gideon, tell everybody where they can find you, sir.
Yes, you can find me upside right down here at alexandergideon.net. You can find links to all of my works on there, my event schedule, links over to my blog as well, and to all of my social media. So go check it out.
Awesome. AJ?
You can find me at ajmullikin.com. Okay. And Facebook, AJ Mullikin Author, or my group Mullikin's Maniacs. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram. I'm not on Twitter as much anymore. TikTok. I don't even want to go with TikTok. But there too, AJ Mullikin. You can find me anywhere. That's me.
Awesome. All right, Samantha?
I'm at SamanthaBryant.com is my website, and I'm getting ready to redo it. So if you go over there and you look at it and you can tell me what you think is crappy about it, that would help. Thank you. And
Cool.
For finding me on social media, really, you could just Google Samantha Bryant author. Make sure you add the author, though, because if you don't, you get Tom Hanks's daughter-in-law or something like that. And I just don't look the same in a ball gown.
Fair enough. All right, Ron, where can everybody find you, sir?
Well, my target audience is readers, so I wrote my website down, and they can read it. If you can't read this, you're really not my target audience.
Fair enough.
But yeah, my website, as crappy as it is, has all my other contact information.
Awesome. All right.
So-
And no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
I
cut
love
you
you
off.
all.
There you go. Thank you, everybody. I am Joe Compton. This is Go Indie Now. If you're here for the first time, congratulations, you found us. You know what you can do while you're here? You can smash that like button. That would be really helpful. Comment, subscribe, do all those wonderful things that you do. We've got some really great stuff being posted. I'm really posting a lot daily because I'm currently covering Slamdance Film Festival. So I have tons of interviews that I've been posting, and there'll be another couple that'll go out today. There's a couple up already. You can go check that out. Also, if you are an author and you have something new coming out in 2022 that is of standalone or first edition of a series, come and contact me. I have a form available that you can use to do that, or you can just message me or whatever, and I'll get you to the right place. But for that, you can contact me, and I will read it and review it on my blog, which is freshbutterpopcorn.blogspot.com. That's where we do all our Go Indie Now reviews. We've got some really great reviews coming up, and again, I'm covering Slamdance, so there's a lot of Slamdance stuff on there right now. But Mr. JD is probably going to be doing some music reviews here very soon. And I also have a couple books to post about as well. So go check us out there and find all your content there. That being said, enough of me yapping, enough of everybody yapping, because the last 5 minutes belongs to the one and only Mr. Adam Gaffen. So Adam, take it away. It is all yours, sir.
Hey, thanks, Joe. It's been a blast being here talking with everybody today. You can find me at CassidyChronicles.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram, Adam Gaffen. I'm the only one out there, except no substitutes. And for you guys today, I've got a new book coming out in April. It's a collection of stories from the Cassidyverse. It's called Into the Black. You can see it behind me. And I'm going to read you a little bit from one of the stories. It's called Murder on the Missouri. Okay, so here we go. The body of Cadet Kins Ferguson was found by her bunkmate, Cadet Samuel Austin Costanza, who was lying in a pool of blood, face down and half dressed in her skin suit. He screamed, bringing in more of his fellow cadets before Senior Lieutenant Stephanie Lyle managed to clear the scene. Assisted by Sergeants Aiden and Andrew Bergstresser, she secured the body, restrained Costanza, and isolated the other cadets discovered rubbernecking in the small compartment. They abandoned their training crews and immediately returned to Njord, which is when the whole steaming mess fell into my lap. My name is Kyle Davis, and I'm what passes for human law enforcement in the Terran Federation. Okay, I'm not being fair. The 4 former members of the Solarian Union still maintain locals for enforcement. But the central hub, the Habitat Njord, and the Outworlds are all automated and overseen by an elaborate network of AIs. But when the AIs are stumped, they call in the Ministry of Intelligence. Alyssa Jordan runs it. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that her sweet Southern Belle act hides a mind like a damn computer and the tenacity of a Rottweiler. The only problem is her agents are soft. They've come to depend on their tech, their gadgets, and their AI assistants. They don't have instincts, they have programs and probabilities. That's where I come in. I was a PI on Earth before taking Jordan's credits to be her troubleshooter. If I'm being honest, she got me out of a sticky situation back in Las Vegas Free State. I won't get into the details, but let's just say there's a few families with a capital F who'd be perfectly happy to see me a couple meters underground. So I grabbed a lift, dumped the sand from my shoes, and ended up in an office in the Habitat, underworked and overpaid, just the way I like it, until crap like this happens. How smelly is it this time, Al? I asked when she calmed me. She hated when I called her Al. Pretty rank, Kevin, she answered with a smile, jabbing me back. She was the only one who knew my former name and pulled it out when provoked. I thought it would be, Alyssa. You never call me otherwise. You know, we ought to get together for a drink sometime. I'd like that, Kyle, she returned, after we deal with this. Right. What is it? A murder. My eyebrows went up. Murders happen, but only rarely, and the AIs usually had the evidence to snap up the suspect in no time. On the Missouri. Crap on toast. Now I knew why Al was calling me. See, there was one place in the whole damn Federation which didn't have any AI presence, in the Missouri. The full name these days was TFS Missouri, NSCX 1-01. She was the refitted USS Missouri. Yeah, that one. Built in the freaking 1940s. The rumor was she'd been intended as a weapon of last resort during the Artemis War, but was never deployed. Instead, the war ended, and the Federation was left with a half-converted battleship. Some bright soul decided it would be good to finish the conversion as a training ship for the Academy. Me? I would have returned it to Earth, express if necessary. So, that's a sample from Murder on the Missouri, one of the stories included in the Cassidyverse collection, Into the Black. And don't forget, it's always time to go indie now.